We're so glad that you're joining us today. All right, we're just letting people in the room. I see some familiar faces there. And just to welcome back, it's been about a year and a half since we were doing, well, not quite, but the parent meetings we turned into taboo talks, because I was doing about 4 meetings a week with business owners and employees and then the parents, and just trying to pump out information and help people be as facilitated as possible in protecting their jobs and their families and their kids. And so in that time, we have been growing Action for Canada. We've been focused on going to, I just got asked, oh, yep, sorry, I was just taking a look at something. We've been focused on as well our administration and bringing people on board to help manage the immense growth that we're having. And of course, building those chapters nationwide. I'll show you an image of that in just a moment. In that time as well, is really important because I was spreading myself pretty thin to be overseeing all these different groups. I'm so happy to also introduce Doris Livingston, who is one of the parent leads, and over homeschooling, she comes with amazing qualifications to be here, leading this particular topic on homeschooling today. And so Doris, will you come on and say hello for a moment, and then I'll do my bit of an introduction, and then we'll get back to the homeschooling.
So, yeah, you bet.
Good stuff.
Everybody can hear me okay?
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, my name's Doris. I live in the sunny Okanagan of British Columbia. And did you want me to do my presentation right now?
No, just if you could tell a little bit about yourself, and then I'll do the beginning presentation on the website, and we'll go back to you for the homeschooling presentation.
Okay, yeah. So I'll just give you a quick little bio. Back in the late 80s, I was already married. My husband told me, we are going to homeschool our kids. And I said, what is that? Why do I need to do that? And I think I turned out pretty good. So I didn't see the need to homeschool until I started having my children in the 90s. And turned out to be the best decision ever. We took it 1 year at a time under an era where there was still hostility, and we had to be sort of discreet, and there were lots of people homeschooling even ahead of me already. But we managed to get through that and push our way into the 2000s until all my kids graduated. And so it's exploded. I want to say over the last 20 years, it has exploded.
Right. And for good reason, right? Who wants to have their child, if they had a choice, in the, well, we would always say in the public school system, but now we have to also include the private schools. And it's really quite shocking, the agenda that has pushed its way into the education system. And something that we really want to emphasize today is that, there was once upon a time where a lot of parents were pulling their kids out of the public education and putting them in private schools, thinking that they could, have a quality education for their children, protect their children, from all of the socialist type of propaganda that was coming into the public education. But now we see that the private education is also being infiltrated by this agenda. And so they're pressing in on homeschooling. And so I always encourage that we need all parents on the front line with us, fighting the globalization of our education system and the sexualization of our children. And so tons of parents are exiting the school system and deciding to find ways to homeschool. And it's very exciting because, where there isn't registrations in the school system, they either have to let teachers go, they can't afford to keep the electricity going in the schools without those bums in those seats. And so we are disrupting it. It's really, really critical that we get as many parents facilitated as possible to homeschool. And I'll just talk a bit about that. I'll just mention as well, that's one of the reasons when I show you the chapters and how they're growing, we're also, Dan Vachon is on, Pastor Dan, and he is one of our leads with the pastoral support, and we're also working with churches to open their doors to give homeschooling space. And many pastors are stepping up and doing that as well. So if it's a single mom or somebody who just, doesn't has to work and can't be home, we are trying as an organization to work with as many people as possible, so that this can happen. And and at the same time, pressing in on the education system to remove critical race theory, climate change propaganda, and of course the sexualization of our children. And I think Action for Canada is doing a really phenomenal job. We're hurting them bad, and we're going to continue to do that because this is a fight for our kids. All right, so I'm just going to quickly go through a couple of pages. Maybe put in the chat if you've never heard of Action for Canada, or maybe you have, but this is one of the first webinars you've been to. We'd love to hear from you as well for parent meetings moving forward. Throw some of your ideas in the chat because we are here to serve Canadians. And we are very, very intent on providing, not only educating people, but equipping them, encouraging them, and mobilizing them to be able to tangibly take action within their communities. So this is a map of Canada, of course, and all those beautiful little red maple leaves, those are all Action for Canada chapters. It took us about a year to get, we were growing so fast, we had to put a pause on it. We got our administration, like I say, built up, and this map is going to fill up because we want to be in every town and city, and then as well affect every election. We got to be at all of those school board meetings. We need all moms and dads to show up at the at the school board meetings, and then at the municipal meetings as well. But especially in this group, we need all parents on hand going to school board meetings and pressuring in. And as well, these are your tax dollars at work. You are still paying in your taxes for kids in the system. It's just brutal to see what they're doing. All right, I just wanted to go here. And if this is the Action for Canada chapter page, if under join you see APRC chapters, if you wanted to take a look. And the reason I'm showing you this is I mentioned that everywhere we have a chapter, we are asking a pastor to open his church so that chapter can meet there. We're asking that pastor to help facilitate homeschooling. And so it's really important that if a parent were to reach out to us and say, I really want to homeschool my child, and I'm in the Calgary area, well, we would also connect you. If we have a chapter there, we would also connect you with the chapter, because I say that we're building communities within communities of like-minded people who can support one another. So you would click on your province, and then you could scroll down and you could see if there's a chapter near you. So that's why I keep encouraging. All right, now I'm going to go to that very important topic. We call it the political LGBTQ activism. If you go to current issues, you go down to the bottom, you'll find the page. And so I'm just going to show you where to access some of the information. I would recommend that you watch either one or both of these videos. It's very informative to show how this LGBTQ have been just hijacked by radical activists. And this is a global agenda, and it is centered on sexualizing our children at the earliest age possible. It's very abusive. It's sexually abusive. It is focused on promoting pedophilia, bestiality, and all kinds of other sexual deviancies. It's really shocking that it's gotten as far as it has. So I'll come back up here in just a moment to show you the SOGI 123 notice of liability we've created. This is a link to the books, Identical, Fun Home, Genderqueer, etc., giving a bit of a review and showing what's going on there and why it's in public libraries and school libraries. And I believe that they aren't even being approved by provinces. For usually unions and parent groups oversee books and resources going into schools and etc. But it seems that people are donating a lot of these books as well. And so they've just ended up in the schools with nobody really paying attention to it previously. Report I wrote in 2018, testimony from a girl that was in the public school system, Sarah, lovely girl, 14 years old, a trans person shows up, said, if you're not uncomfortable in your body, you're probably struggling with gender dysphoria, which started her journey towards getting on hormones. This is her here, growing a beard, having her breasts removed. And a year ago, praise the Lord, she realized that she was being deceived and is on a road to renewal and recovery. On this page as well, we're providing really important information. If you have individuals in your, maybe it's your sister and her son is like wanting to be a girl, and she's like, oh, they've told me that he'll commit suicide. That whole thing they're doing to manipulate people. Do you want a live son, or or a live daughter, or a dead son? And it's really, really disgusting. So there's all kinds of incredible information that you would be able to, resources to send. Other huge success, and this is why I'm calling for all hands on deck, is in places like the United States and the UK. People are rising up and they are having great success. In the United States, there's a dozen states who have banned child transitioning, and there's approximately another dozen states who have bills that have been tabled. And they're just pushing them through. They're pushing them through against drag queens. There's way more reports, but it's a matter of our time in order to put them on the page, but we'll try to update that. All of the actions that we're doing in exposing any kind of radical trans behavior is on this page. We've had John Euler on. He is a therapist who has been practicing for 30 years with victims, but for 14 years as well with the worst of the worst sexual criminals in prisons. And these are lengthy videos, but I'm telling you, they're well worth it to know what a sexual predator looks like, who they are, and how to keep your kids protected. And that protection comes from you knowing and being able to identify these people who may be in your church, a family member, etc. That little gut feeling inside of you is generally pretty right on, and you need to listen to that voice. Anyways, that's a lot of information on this page and calls to action. When you have time, scroll through it, be educated, because knowledge is power. It's so powerful when you have this in your hands. So if you click on this page, you will end up on the notice of liability page. Again, in Ontario, it's called the Win Sex Ed. So we've provided a notice of liability for everybody in Canada. And Ontario is just unique. It's all the same thing, comprehensive sexuality education from the UN, but just by different names. So I just wanted to bring awareness, read through these pages, get a little bit informed. So what are we doing about it? One last thing, sorry, I will bring weekly emails. This week, I'm sorry, that's my bad dog. Okay, my apologies. Okay, so under weekly emails, we sent out this one is, are they educating global citizens? That's the new phrase. When you start hearing a family member or anybody talking about that, we're educating global citizens. And I've called school board trustees out saying, no, you're supposed to be educating Canadian citizens, sovereign citizens under the Canadian Constitution and the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And so this is it's a bit of a mockery, but it's not. This is the reality of what's going on in our classrooms. This is the thing. Math is racist. 2 + 2 = 5. Join a gay straight alliance. The Chinese are educating their children, and the homeschoolers are educating their children and doing a phenomenal job. And our education system is making social activists on them based on a foundation of nonsense, right? So we got to bring a reality back. We got to rescue as many kids as possible and get them out of this system. All right, so what are we doing to achieve that? Under resources, there's a couple of different ones that you'll see. I hope you're taking some notes, but this video will be available as well. There's the youth movement, youth leadership and speaker program, and then of course there's the parent resources. And so for years, we have been, working towards giving our youth a voice. And last year, we started the first youth leadership program, and it has just turned into amazing experience. And again, we have the new youth leadership program starting this Friday. No, April 21st, sorry, a week Friday. when you go to the Youth Freedom Movement, this page, we just did one in February, March. I would encourage you to go and listen to these videos. These are just short clips. The kids had to give a speech at the end. And if you keep scrolling down, these were the ones from last year. And it will give you encouragement because the globalists, they know that the youth are the key to the future, but we know that too. And so we've got to be working and investing in our youth and teaching them how to use their voice. We go over the Constitution and the Charter rights and all kinds of other good information. We talk about different social issues with them, and it is really phenomenal how advanced they are in their understanding and their maturity, and being able to think critically and for themselves. And I think that's going to be the win. So be sure to register and join. I'm not going to take up any more time here. We could carry on and on and on because there's just so much work that Action for Canada is doing, but that just gives you a little bit of an idea where some of the resources are that I would encourage you to get educated on, whether your child is being homeschooled or whether you have them in the education system. All right, thank you so much, Doris. Now it's over to you.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, recently, I want to say maybe 2 months ago, my daughter and her husband had their oldest in kindergarten at a very special private school here in town. And they're preparing to eventually homeschool, but it happened earlier than they had planned because lo and behold, in kindergarten, the drag queen showed up for story time. And that did cross the line for my daughter and her husband, and they pulled her and asked me immediately if I could homeschool her till the end of the school year, which I have. And they're now enrolling her into homeschooling into next fall. So it's an absolute joy and delight to be doing this again. I'm actually having a really good time. I homeschool her 3 days a week, and then my other daughter takes her for 1 day of the week. So it all seems to come together. One of the reasons we decided to homeschool, as I started to study it more, and my sister, older sister, and my sister-in-law had already pioneered before me, was I was really intrigued about how you can tailor the education toward each child, because I have 3 kids and they all learn very, very differently. And so I was determined that my kids were going to be the smartest kids ever, like ever. But I realized over time that because they learn differently, that what mattered more to me over time was how they can learn. And we don't spoon feed them, we teach them how to learn. And how do you create that sort of joy in them to learn? And we were able to semi-control the kind of influences they had in their friends, positive socialization versus negative socialization. I know socialization is always the biggest question we get asked as homeschoolers. And I think now we can show the fruit, because a lot of these kids are now in their 30s and 40s that have children of their own, and they're fitting very well into society. And they're strong and healthy, emotionally and mentally and spiritually strong. So the answers are there now. I was quite proactive in the community. We lived in a very small town at the time on the coast of Vancouver Island. And we had a large homeschool group, a support group. And we had lots of activities to keep the kids busy throughout the week. So not only did they have their school or their friends from the homeschool activities, we had they made friends through sports, music lessons. My middle daughter is a photographer, so really engaged in those classes one-on-one and finding new friends. So it's not hard. I think initially, if you're worried about it, just stay on top of it. And eventually it'll all come together, especially as these homeschooling is so big now that there are so many learning groups or pods or co-ops, whether like in BC, we actually have organized learning pods or community groups done through certain homeschool schools that support homeschooling. I'm sure there's opportunities like that across the country as well. Now, before I go on, I'm just going to screen share here as well our Action for Canada page on homeschooling. So right there. I got so much stuff on the front here. Homeschooling revolution. There we go. Can you all see this? Is this working? Perfect. Okay. And on here, you will see the directory at the top, but I'm just going to scroll down. There is a video interview we did last summer, and I see Heather's word is in our chat here today. So thank you for signing in, Heather. And some other links. And then this one's interesting. I watched that again last night. This is a movement in Calgary. And I've reached out to him, waiting to hear back to see how that's going. He and his wife left the school system and started, what's the word I'm thinking of? Tutoring for homeschoolers. And they're in the Northwest, I think, and with very connected to the homeschooling movement in Alberta. So they're a new movement. I couldn't find his email address, but if you go to Learn Here, you can read more about it. This is a Nova Scotia link, Ontario, and then a few more things you can look at. Just scrolling back to the top here. If you go to Homeschool Association directory, I've reached out to the provinces across Canada. Each province has its own homeschool association. So you can see Alberta, Manitoba, New Brunswick, they're all down here. The big one is Ontario, and that's Heather, who has signed in here today. And they've got the most homeschoolers in Canada. And by the way, I did a little research this week, and I found out that homeschooling in Canada doubled in the last 2 years. I think initially it was, everybody was forced to stay home, but people stayed on and stuck it out and stayed on. And the number one reason, this research, the second reason came from the US on their homeschool site, was bullying. And the second one was curriculum. And I went, wow, I wonder why. So it's exciting. Anyways, if you go to these websites for each province, this is how I suggest you start, is you look up the website, and these websites are full of information on how to get started. You will find your support groups. The leaders there will narrow it down to the region you live in, and they will say there's a support group, let's say it's Ontario up in Barrie or one in Mississauga, and they'll get you connected. There's lots of videos. I noticed on the Nova Scotia one, the second one here, they have a great how to get started. So this is really good links to get you started. Each province has its own laws and regulations. They're very similar. In BC, you have two options. There's the traditional homeschooling, which is across the Canada, which is how it all started 45 years ago. And then we have a new thing here, which I know some other provinces have. It's enrollment, where you have a homeschool friendly school. Most of them are Christian schools in BC that offer homeschool programs that come with teachers that oversee your project, your schoolwork. They can either come in your home once or twice a year and see if you're meeting all the learning outcomes, or they are accessible all the time online. Technically in BC, the traditional homeschooling is technically homeschooling. Everything else is considered school at home, which they get more funding for that as well. The government does, or the Ministry of Education, I guess. So I personally chose traditional homeschooling for my kids, And my oldest was the only one that wanted to do the actual grad program, which is grade 10, 11, 12 in BC. And so we switched her over to enrollment for those last 3 years. And actually she challenged her grade 10 because we started her a year late. She passed it and actually graduated a year early. And so did my youngest. So that was pretty awesome. Let's move along to, oh, I just wanted to say, interesting. I heard this once in my lifetime and I did some digging. Before Confederation in 1867, education was predominantly done in the home. And after that, schooling became funded and regulated by provincial ministries of education. Homeschooling resurfaced in the 1980s. And these were those major pioneers. I'm sure back in the day, we thought they lived in the bush, maybe in the 70s. But it got more and more common in the 80s and then well on its way in the 90s, and literally paved a way for a third alternative of education in Canada and the United States. And it's everywhere. There are some European countries that are on board, some that they're not. But it is growing all over the world. Okay, so we're going to move over to...
Doris, had you wanted to go down to the bottom of this page to show the extra resources?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, very good. Very important. So right here, the HSLDA, Homeschool Legal Defense Association, I actually opened up their website over here. And they offer the legal protection for Canadian homeschoolers. They know all the laws of each province, but they offer additional services, which they didn't have when I was joined. So they offer exceptional needs consulting, and you get a 1 free hour of consultation. Just read through that. And then curriculum consulting. So if you're just starting and you're completely overwhelmed, this would be another great opportunity. Even the consultation alone, they can point you to the right places. Now, again, those websites for the provincial sites also do all that. And then expert homeschool advice. So I was quite happy about seeing that there. So legally too, like in the 80s and 90s, they were very, very active protecting our homeschool laws. And every once in a while, things still come up, particularly in Quebec, Newfoundland, Labrador. They still have some issues, but the HSLDA is great. They cost about, I think, $162 to join if you're part of a homeschool association that supports HSLDA. Otherwise, it's $190 a year. But by joining them, you get all these services and you're supporting what they're doing. And I knew I was going to be okay in BC in my group. I didn't think I was ever going to need HSLDA legally, but I supported them all these years because I knew that they were working hard on the front lines for other people in Canada. And that was really important to me. Okay, so where are we here? At the bottom. No, not that one. This one. Yeah. If you want to know homeschool laws and regulations, this is a nice site. You can just at a glance read that. The Learning House is a website where you can get more information on curriculum and all that. Down here are some magazines. Classical Conversations is a really great approach to enriching your child's education through classical learning. It's really awesome. Homeschool Today and Teaching Home, I think those are American. Yeah, they are. Very, very good. Lots of tips on how to homeschool, ideas on keeping your homeschool creative. You can sign online and then just get a digital version. I don't know if they still make hard copies, but would be worth looking at. I guess one of the questions, and I'm just gonna come out of this again here. There we go. one of the questions people ask is, do I need any formal training? And the answer is no. You love your child, you know your child best, and you are the best able to assess their interests, needs, and goals in a way no other person can. And the longer you have your kids at home, the more you understand how they learn. So I'll give you an example. My oldest child is like her dad. She can read a book and know every page memorized in her head and can quote you anything. She's a reader, and she is a great public speaker. My second one was, why would I read the book when I can watch the movie? And I'm more like that myself. So not that she doesn't read, because she does read, but she was later in learning to read. But that's the beauty of homeschooling. So there's no pressure if they're not reading at 5. So my oldest was reading at 4.5. And I unfortunately thought that was kind of normal. And then when my second came along, she was reading some words at 6. But it really came to fruition at 8. And when you've got those early years and we tend to compare with other moms, and we think, oh, their kid is super smart and my kid's not reading yet. But you know what? They do. They come along. Everybody figures it out. And that's the beauty of homeschooling, is you work at their pace and you don't rush them. My third was I think she just learned through osmosis, because she just sat at the table, and for me to keep her busy was I just gave her coloring papers while I was teaching my second. And when my third one was ready, when she was ready, according to the book, when she was ready, she just figured it out. And I figured she learned by listening. She just leaned in and listened all the time. So teaching her to read was very easy. She's a musician, and she lives in Nashville now. And my second one worked for an airline, and now she is a photographer and a stay-home mom. And my oldest works in the finance area of the world, investments and all that, and doing fine, and having to scale back for next year. So my motto always was, delight directed studies. So what delights them? What delights them? And as you have your children home, you realize, wow, my one child really loves mechanics. He loves to take things apart and put them back together. My other one loves dogs. And for a season there, my oldest, she was about 10. She wanted to breed hamsters. So you cover everything. You cover your written work by researching hamsters, and then she started breeding them and selling them in town. And science, it covered science, it covered math, reading. It covered a lot of the core curriculum that you need. So when you find out in your child what they love to learn, it's pretty exciting, and tailoring their education that way. The key is, and I know everybody's going, just tell me what to do, curriculum. I just need to know what kind of curriculum. That's where I would say, if you're starting in kindergarten, that's the best time to start, because you have like up to, I don't know, K to 4. Just lean back, play games, learning games, activities, songs, adventures outside. Give them lots of time to explore, touch and feel. Build and destroy, blow things up, whatever it is that kids need to do. Build a fort. There's so much learning. If you look at everything as a learning opportunity, even sweeping the floor, like chores, all those things, it really becomes a lifestyle. If you are pulling your kid out at grade 7, I would really lean into the support groups that you've got, because your child has been so used to a structured system, whether it was public school or private school. Most kids, that's what it is. They're used to large classroom sizes and waiting in line, and the teachers telling me what to do. And that's why it takes so many hours a day to get school done, where when you have your child at home, you can have all your core curriculum done, even at grade 7 by lunchtime. And over time, they start to realize, wow, like I have free time after lunch. And they do and they don't. You can structure your free time to make it fun. If you're pulling your child, and now this child's in grade 10, and you're pulling them for reasons because of SOGI or bullying or whatever's going on, again, I would consult with your provincial homeschool websites and talk to somebody personally one-on-one, so they will guide you through what you need to do. They will help you get set up with curriculum. The curriculum world is like this big. It is like across the world, huge. It can be overwhelming if you've never looked at it. So when you're starting, you've got a lot of time to research and try different things, because when your children are young, you don't quite yet know what their learning style is. And I'm hoping by the time they are in grade 7, you now know which way they lean. Are they musical? Do they love math? Do they, like my middle daughter, take pictures and videos of everything? Do they want to tinker around with cars? Do they love to research and study and really know things? And when you kind of see which way they are bent or created by God, it's beautiful to see that. You just tailor your curriculum so it suits them. Yes, there will be times when the child has to write a sentence, and a lot of young kids dread writing anything. So why not make it interesting? If they're into mechanics, why don't they research their favorite car and write 3 things about it? If they're into sports and they love baseball, why don't they research their favorite baseball player or their favorite hockey player? And then it can expand from there. There's so much, it's just endless. I often feel like I didn't have enough time to get it all in, because we had such a good time. And the other thing that happens as your kids learn is you as a teacher learn everything all over again, because we know when we graduated, we don't remember all of that stuff we took. We know how to read and write and count, and we know some things, but there's lots of things we missed out on. So by homeschooling, you get to learn it with them, and that's what makes it really exciting. Okay, I'm going to go back to a screen here, and I'm going to show you, I think it's this one. No, where'd it go? I think it's this one. Yeah, here we are. Okay. Here we are. How to start. In Canada, 6 steps to start your journey. I found this on, can't I see the, let's go back to the top of the page here. The Canadian Homeschooler magazine. And it's a great resource if you want to write that down. The gal who put this together was very thorough and has answered, I think, every question in the world. So every homeschooler has a story about why they choose this journey. Now, currently, I think a lot of people are pulling kids because it's a reaction. I would encourage you to embrace what homeschooling offers and that you get to do it instead of going, oh no, I have to do it. You get to do it. And it's so exciting because when you see what they're good at and how they shine, these kids are just blow you away. So it's important to write down why you want to homeschool. Make sure they're visible and then use them to feel confident in your decision. And why is this important? And I was thinking back about this stuff because you will have days when people question you and make you doubt. And they will. They certainly made me question, and I had to really defend myself in the early 90s. Or your child and you fight and you wonder if you should keep going, and that will happen. Or life feels overwhelming and you don't know if you can do this anymore. Having that clear why means that you can remind yourself of your reasons and can keep pushing through rough days or doubt with clarity. You could even write a little sticky on your fridge or in your bathroom mirror every morning you wake up and say, this is why I'm doing this. And, you know, I'll be honest, if you're pulling your child, the first year will not be easy because the child, again, has been so used to a certain system, and you're going to be wondering why in the world you're doing this. But it comes out on the sweet side. You just got to wait, find the support. Support is everything. Surround yourself with these people, get connected. And whether it's live in person is best, but there's lots of online support now too. So step 2, understand the rules. That has to do with your province. And it actually lists all the provinces on what is required and how, what you need to do. The only thing really you need to do, I think in most provinces, is if your child's currently in there, maybe notify them that they're not going to be going back. In BC, that's all you have to do. Oh, in BC, you also have to register at any school. It can be a Christian school. It can be an online homeschool school. That, again, you'll have to look up on your province. Step 3, get support. We just talked about that. You can just read that when you have time. But it's really important to stay connected because it really keeps you going, and you find you make new friends. That's where your children meet new friends, and a lot of sharing of ideas go on of what works for different families, different tricks. And then choosing curriculum, that's the big one. I know a lot of times people just tell me what to do. I would say if you've got nothing right now for K to 4, just read to them, lots of reading to them, read to them till they're in grade 12. Just read good books. Get them reading, work, even if you went to Walmart and got a little book on printing out letters. I mean, it's a starting point as you are trying to find good curriculum. A lot of good Christian curriculum out there. Learning styles, visual, auditory, kinetic. We just talked about that with my children. Another thing I learned about myself is a teaching style. In the early days, they had this program called Bob Jones University. And I mean, I looked at that book and I went, it was like this thick. And I went, I can't do that. I can't even read that book. I'm overwhelmed. And so it's important when you look at curriculum for your child, see how you relate to it too, because you're going to be guiding them and helping them and teaching them through their curriculum, and you need to be able to understand it too. So it's not just about the child. Take the time to read through it and see if you connect with it. Different approaches, schooling at home, traditional, that's what I did. I basically did a little bit of everything. I did classical, Charlotte Mason. I did unit studies. Unit studies are great where you can do 2 or 3 kids at once and talk about the world. You can talk about geography together, and then you have different expectations for grade 5, grade 3, grade 1, or if they're in high school and you're going to dissect an animal, like back in the day, we did frogs in school. So different expectations, but the unit study is frogs. It covers science, it'll cover math, it'll cover writing, it'll cover reading and social studies. It'll cover a lot. So, and they're really fun to do because I spent a lot of time outside with my kids doing unit studies. And then, yeah, eclectic, that was me, a little bit of everything because of my kids' learning styles. See that word right here, unschooling. Part of unschooling is that first year. If you've got a child who has been bullied terribly at school and now they're coming home, or if they were always falling between the cracks at school and they knew they were always behind, if you put a piece of paper down in front of them and say, okay, now we're homeschooling, I need you to fill in the blanks, they're going to cringe and they're going to resist probably. So by unschooling, that means you just give them the time and the space. It might be 3 months, it might actually be a year, and see what they're interested in. Encourage the learning, but I wouldn't force so much paper fill in the blank stuff, because that's what a lot of our mainstream schools do, is filling in blanks. And we were raised that way. I went to public school, and there's a feeling of success when we fill in a blank. And sometimes they need to go outside, and you will watch what they are able to do, and they will blow you away. I am so impressed with kids. When we expect greatness of kids, especially when they're teenagers, and we don't dumb them down, we treat them with respect and have our bar high enough, they will perform. They will be great kids. And they won't be that kid that's living in their mother's basement at age 30 who still can't figure out how to get a job. These kids will get out there and they will learn how to work and contribute. So that's the other thing I always kept at the back of my mind. Expect greatness from my child and delight in their uniqueness. If they're different, that's what makes the family life exciting. Okay, and then here, learning about different homeschooling methods. There's a 10-part video series. You can link into that. Here it is again, how to homeschool in Canada, the 10 steps. So a really great resource that is on our webpage as well. If you have the time, go down there and look at that. Number 6, never stop learning. I'm still like that. I love learning, and I love watching, like with my granddaughter, watching her learn. So, how do I pull my child from school? If they're in the school, like I said, you just notify them. Sometimes you gotta send an official letter. Sometimes you gotta write an email. You will find that out on your provincial website. And the other question I get asked a lot is, how do I know what the learning outcomes are for each grade? When you homeschool, I would encourage you to consider the big picture and then make small goals. So if you're just going to do 1 year, then look at the year goal and break it down. What can we try to achieve week by week, month by month? I would encourage you, if you can, pull your child forever and make it a family lifestyle. It is extremely rewarding. You really bond with your children. My kids are very bonded to me even now, because we've spent 17 years together in schooling at home. And then after their dad died, they were teenagers. I was a single mom, and I decided to finish homeschooling them right to grade 12. So it is possible. And so how do we, I'll just touch on single parenting in a minute, but I'm just going to finish up on learning outcomes for, like I said, kindergarten to grade 4, get them reading, printing, basic math skills. And then you can get a scope and sequence from your provincial, I think, Ministry of Education, that pretty much lays out what's sort of expected from each grade. You can also get that information from your provincial homeschool website. They will tell you what's expected in your province. Now, interestingly, if I were to move to New Brunswick, and I had my children were still young and with me, the learning outcomes would be slightly different. So each province has its sort of, like what they expect you to do in grade 8 in New Brunswick might be what you do in grade 9 in BC. So there could be some overlapping if you were to move. But again, if you have the whole picture, and I decided probably when my kids were, I think within the first 5 years of homeschooling, I decided I was going to do it for the long haul, because it just got better and better. And I went, well, as long as we hit this landmark by the time she's 10, and as long as we hit this landmark by, let's say we started school in September, by January, let's hope we've covered this unit study. So I made these big goals, and then I broke it down into small goals, and then I broke it down to each child because they all learn differently at different paces. In the end, it all works out. So that's the main thing, right? In the end, they got the core learning done, and they're good to go. And then how to homeschool in Canada, there's a conclusion there. They've got, so right here, you can listen to 20 veteran Canadian homeschoolers. So these are people who've done it before you and who have successfully gone through the whole season. I wanted to tap into this site here. My daughter, my oldest daughter, who is trying to figure out how to juggle work next year and homeschooling, she actually found this site. So this is one for parents who, either single parents who are trying to homeschool, or if you are married and you're both working and you're trying to juggle it all. So there's that. This gal, also Jen McKinnon, has a Facebook group. So you can share lots of ideas there. So that's kind of interesting. Special needs, I wanted to quickly talk about that. In BC, we've got, I'm just going to come back to, how do I get out of that? There we go. In BC, Heritage Christian Online School literally is down the hill from me. They're the biggest homeschool supporting school in BC, and wide awake to what's going on here in Canada. And they actually offer a program for special needs. I have a friend who was a teacher on Vancouver Island who joined HCOS to be their special needs facilitator. So there's ways to get government funding in addition to that. And still have your child at home. And even if you choose to do programs where it's online and there is some sort of funding involved, you as a parent still can control what they learn and not learn. So if anything tries to creep in, you can catch it before it comes in. It's very, very rare if that were to happen, but it is there. I just wanted to show you one more thing, and then we're going to go into Q&A here. There we go. Can you see this one about 10 reasons to homeschool the high school years? Okay. Sometimes we think we need to put our kids back in school around grade 9 because we don't feel qualified to do high school. Usually by the time they're in grade 7 and grade 8, they're quite self-directed learners. We don't have to teach them so much anymore because they've learned how to learn. And that's the beauty of homeschooling, is they learn how to learn. And I took this from the website of the OCHEC website. That's Heather Zwart's Ontario Homeschool Support Group. And I love the values. It's not even focused on curriculum, because I think the values is what we really want to instill in the long run in our kids. Number one, to continue the family building process. Number two, to cement family relationships. Number three, provide an excellent learning environment. Individualized education based on their needs. You can accelerate the academic progress. So if they're moving along, move them along, which is what I did with my oldest. She was ready to roll, and my youngest too. Actually, my youngest, her last year, we went to Brazil, and she did, we took math and English, and we lived there for 3 months, and we did some ministry there. And she managed to finish even a year early doing it that way. And that was the beauty of homeschooling, is that we could travel. Number 6, have direct influence over peer relationships. Bingo, that's a big one. You can have positive socialization for your children. And because there's a lot of negative socialization out there, right from day one, kindergarten, grade 7, whenever it starts for you, you as a parent can control. And then positive social. There's some great kids out there, and we just got to find them for our children. Number 7, protect from the pressure to conform. Another one. Lots of flexibility, creating a safe learning environment, and allow God to show himself strong. And that was very true in my family after my husband died. You know, how are we going to make it? But God was strong, and he gave us all we needed to get through it. So anyways, I just wanted to let you know that probably the main thing is tap into those websites in your province, know your rules, your government policies. Ask your support groups there if there's Facebook groups to link into where you can get ideas of how to fill your week with activities. And the other thing is, I would encourage you to look at it as your new job, because I always thought, I have a new job, but I'm not getting paid a dime for it. But what you get is the value 20 years later, and that is worth everything. That's it.
Awesome. Oh, well, thank you so much, Doris, for walking us through that information. I want to encourage anybody, if you stop sharing screen.
Oh,
That's right.
yeah.
And down at the bottom under reactions, because I know people have been putting questions in the chat. So select under reactions to raise your hand and we'll get to your questions. I'm just seeing if there's, yeah, if you select it, you can do your little Zoom hand. Or if you can't do that and you've got a question, just raise your hand or put the question in the chat. I know that there was some, I'm just trying to scroll back up to the top. Can you unmute, Heather? There you are.
Okay. No, I don't have a question or a comment, except that one of the things that we have found in Ontario is that while there have been a lot of homeschool families, the last couple of years have caused them to start being hesitant about who they can bring into their circle and who they can trust and who they want to associate with. So even though it may be hard for a while to connect with other homeschool families, please keep contacting for ourselves, for Ontario, please keep contacting us. We can get you connected with other homeschoolers. If they're contacting us, probably they're Christians, because that's all over our website. And then we do a safe process of connecting people to each other. So okay. I just regret that it's so hard now to get people to drop that hesitancy.
Right. And I think that that's going to be growing as those communities also advance, right? And that's one of the reasons why at the beginning I was showing the map of Canada with the Action for Canada chapters, because there's already this wonderful group rising up of those like-minded people. A lot of them are associated with the church, but there are a number that are joining us who are not, but see the value in traditional learning. And so I'm really excited about what's taking place and transpiring. And again, I just want to emphasize that, you know, we did our homework when we vetted Heather and other homeschool organizations. And Heather, will you just name the group that you're with again?
I'm with OCHEC, Ontario Christian Home Educators Connection. The last I was at an alternative education conference in London, and I'll be at one in Tillsonburg in a couple of weeks. The very interesting thing I find is that because people can't seem to find the Christian organization, they go there and then they find us there. And that's great. But that's who we are, Ontario Christian Home Educators Connection. We have 17 area reps across Ontario to connect with you. We have mentors who will help you along, who will take your phone calls. And we have a great conference coming up, which I'd love to show you the page for. But yeah.
Do you want to share screen right now? I can do that.
Yeah, so this is our convention. It's May 5th and 6th. It's about 1,000 people. These are our speakers, Chap and Connie. We're going to be talking about parents and being parents and raising your children a lot through the homeschooling. We have our sessions up, what everybody's going to be talking on, and our list of vendors that are going to be there. So pretty much every vendor will be there.
Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say my internet is being unstable now, so I'll go back to not sharing the video.
Yes.
Okay.
That's good. So that's why I want to encourage people, as well as, like I say, we did the vetting of homeschool organizations Canada-wide. There were a lot of homeschooling organizations out there, but when we dug in, I ended up in their search engine, I would put sustainability. The World Economic Forum, the UN, the Agenda 2030, the Global Compact on Migration, and Sustainable Development Goals. And if they had sustainable development goals, I wouldn't even go near them with a 10-foot pole. If they were really promoting the masking and the backs of children, we didn't include them on our website, because moving forward, that's the type of globalization that we're trying to get away from. So who knows where in their curriculum that they're providing parents, where that would be integrated. And so I truly believe that, the partnerships that we're making, Action for Canada doesn't have a homeschooling curriculum. We're not going to recreate the wheel. That's why we have vetted homeschooling organizations that we believe will give parents in those provinces the best possible education for their children and the best connections. And Heather, thank you. Is there anything else that you'd like to add to that?
You guys just do a great job.
Okay, awesome.
I'm not a great speaker. I'm sorry. I find that pretty much every parent can do the homeschooling, and they really don't need to compare how they're doing with somebody else. It's their family, their children. And in Ontario, it says to provide a satisfactory instruction. It doesn't say get your kids to a satisfactory grade, or it just says to instruct them. And it would be unwise for parents to not instruct their children. Then they're opening themselves up to challenges, whether it's through Children's Aid, a nosy neighbor, even an application to our local school. If they can't show that they have some records to indicate that they have been providing some satisfactory instruction, that's really, really important. And I think another avenue that's really important is if you have a child with learning disabilities, having a record that you've been doing satisfactory instruction is so important for those people who you're looking at to provide external resources to help you. They're going to feel more confident about what you're doing if you can show that you have been instructing, and for the age and ability level of your student, that there has been, if at all possible, some progress in what they're doing, and you'll have access to those resources rather than people challenging you. That's what I hear from the moms here in Ontario, that those records are really, really important. Normally I say to people, there's no requirements in Ontario, but I can't say that anymore because there's a lot of people joining into homeschooling and they don't understand sometimes the value of the homeschooling, and they want the freedom without the responsibility. So it's nice to have the freedom away from the public school systems and curriculum, but at the same time, we have to take responsibility for our children's education. That means some instruction.
Right, Heather, so you said you're not a good speaker. I found that very valuable. Absolutely, 100%. So, and this is one of the reasons, a good example as well, why it's really important to connect with one of the homeschooling groups in your province or territory, because they can help support you. And this is what we want to grow across the nation. Down in California and other places, they've tried to ban homeschooling, and other parts of the world, because, the goal is to educate these global citizens. And we're saying hands off. We're taking back control of education. And the Bible is wonderful. It says, raise your children in the way they should go, and they will not depart from it. They may seem to depart from it for a little while, but they come back as they mature. And, it is an incredible responsibility to raise children and in the way that they should go, and we shouldn't be leaving that to somebody else. This is honestly, it's the most, if you've had if you have kids, you're here today, it's one of the most important responsibilities you have. Everything else is second to none. And okay, so
there is another comment I'd like to make, if I can.
Certainly.
So if there are people here that are just starting out, you are going to get some pushback from your family and from your neighbors and from many places. But I want you to know that if you do connect with other homeschoolers, that pushback isn't going to feel so tough. It is tough when you're on it on your own and you don't have those people that are in the same journey with you, helping you and fighting the battle with you. And we need to connect now rather than in 10 years from now when we won't be able to. It's far better to be building our community now when we have at least the freedom that we currently have than to wait until the freedoms are gone.
Right. And I know that as we have mentioned, Action for Canada is working really hard nationwide. And because of the amount of parents that are pulling their kids out of school, we've heard of a Catholic school in Ontario where they've had a 3% decline in registration. And I think the registration is even greater than that because people are pulling their kids in the community from the public schools and putting them in the Catholic school, having believed that they'd get a better education. And these educators, the ministers of education, are beginning to realize this. As I mentioned earlier at the beginning of the webinar, that there's a lot of legislation being passed in the US and UK who were ahead of us in bringing this depravity into the schools. And so that's why they're a bit ahead of us in turning it around. And so we've got to keep that, definitely keep that pressure up. Oh, there was something that I was going to add, but it slipped my mind. I recall as well, like with that pressure of feeling like, my family or my neighbors may say something about homeschooling. This is where we really need to give ourselves a check and think about what's in the best interest of your child. I was already fighting a battle 20 years ago. My kids are 27 and 29 now, and I had bought the books, 3 of the books coming into kindergarten age, and kept those out of the Surrey School District. I was an activist. I was very shy. I thought, I've got to speak up and say something. Enough parents did, but the other side is very persistent. We've got to be more persistent. And my daughter, when she got to grade 8, they had this team building at the school. It's quite a large school, so they had all the grade 8 classes levels come together. And in the gymnasium, this team building, they laid the boys and girls on the floor in the gymnasium and then said, start at this end and roll over each other. My daughter, who was very late in developing, came home traumatized. I wish I had known. I was also a single mother. I wish I had known at that time or how serious the problem was to be able to have pulled her out. And I did so much with them. I homeschooled them when they were at the beginning, grade kindergarten, etc. And then, but we got her a horse, and just the environment changed and the responsibility, and for her mentally and emotionally, it was the best sacrifice and decision that I could have made. So it is a matter of sacrifice and learning how to do this. And I just remembered what I was going to say. Doris had mentioned that your child may like to take things apart and build. My son was incredible at Lego. I remember him buying his first car, and I'd be out there in pouring rain and rainstorm on the side of the road. Maybe his car had broken down. He'd be near tears out of frustration, but he kept at it. He would take that engine apart and do something else. And now he has a big Dodge truck and he can do everything on his own. He doesn't need to bring it to mechanic. And the point is that as we build these communities, there's going to be that parent who is a mechanic. He can do a class maybe once a week for a month on mechanics, on doing an oil change. And it's a wonderful thing for both the boys and girls to be involved in. There are going to be gifts and talents that you may not have in math, but you may have in writing, that there's another parent who can, teach your child math. And you can teach their child about, the art of writing. And so that's the beauty of community. That's what we're trying to do with Action for Canada. And so we would just really encourage you, get involved. If there is a chapter, sign up. We're not at the baby stages of Action for Canada. We're more advanced of that, but we have growth. This is also very new to us and what we're developing nationwide. And sorry, I can see my dog's getting a little frisky over there. They want to play. So just in case they bark. All right. So Doris, I would love it if anybody wants to add to the chat what you'd like to hear about in the future. We were going to bring some of the homeschool leaders on, like Heather, in 2 weeks, and introduce I don't know, more of maybe of the learning styles, etc. So please let us know in the chat what you would find valuable. All right, Doris, do you have anything in closing that you'd like to add?
Yeah, just how to reach me. It's homeschooling@actionforcanada.ca. And so if you have any question about anything in Canada, just email me, and hopefully I can help you out and get you started on your way. And grandmothers, grandpas, we have roles too. And, you know, I was kind of cruising the last little while. I was working for an airline, and they retired me 3 years ago, and then with COVID and everything. But I've realized that we've got a phenomenal role, and sometimes that is how we can help, is just to step in, and even if it's for a season, or cover a subject. If we're really good at baking or teaching routines or something like that. So yeah, there's a place for all of us to help. Our kids are stressed out, and they've got a lot of pressures with their children, and that's something we can do to help.
I love it, right? That's exactly right. Okay, so wonderful. I'm thinking as well, Doris, what would be really great is, as we're asking Canadians and recommending that they pull their kids out of the system, I think on the next webinar to have somebody provide, maybe who's been through that, and grade 8. Are you kidding? You pulled your teenager out of high school? How did that go? But that is in their best interest. I'm getting reports from parents of 10-year-olds who are being, you had mentioned that stats in the United States about being bullied. And it's not about being bullied if they're gay or lesbian. What's happening is they've got all these gay straight alliance clubs in the school, these secret clubs. And now if your 10-year-old isn't part of these clubs, the other kids are snubbing them and actually being very cruel. And so one mom pulled her daughter out. The other one was a mom of a 10-year-old boy, and he was being bullied for being white because of the critical race theory. So it is a war zone in our schools, and we love our kids so much, but we're their only advocate. And you know, their innocence is fleeting, and we don't get a redo for that once they've been exposed to these materials. So like I say, we're in a war. We're working very hard to win this war, but in the meantime, we need to get as many parents and children to safety, and teachers. Teachers are also leaving the education system, and that's the beauty of it, is they're willing to join maybe the church homeschool groups and others. All right, well, that's wonderful. Thank you everyone for spending time with us today. Like I said, if this time is good for you, we've chosen 11 o'clock. I know that that's 2 o'clock and 3 o'clock in the East. It's really hard to manage. And I'm just wondering as well as if 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time may be better to make it 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock in the East, as far as your schedule is concerned. So feel free to email Doris and provide some of that feedback as well. All right, thank you so much. God bless you, and God bless Canada.